Happy Friday, everyone. We made it. We are here, and it is almost the weekend. I hope you're having a great Friday, and I hope we find you in a happy place this Friday. We're going to go over directed energy weapons. You're watching the Gabriel Speaks podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in. Directed energy weapons have been a hot topic, especially these last couple days where it's been released that the United States used some form of sonic weapon during our attack on Venezuela. Now we know that sonic weapons, we know that this type of advanced weaponry has been researched for a long time. We know that one person in particular that we cover a lot in our UFO field, Dr. Lakatsky, was a main figure in laser development for laser weapons over the years. We talk about him at the UFO capacity, but that's also something he was very heavily involved with. Long-range acoustic devices. We're going to start there. So is this what was used in Venezuela? Most likely not. What was used in Venezuela may have been some form of an LRAD, which stands for long-range acoustic device. But it doesn't explain some of the effects that we're hearing coming out that happen with some of these soldiers. A directed energy weapon can mean sound, radio frequency. It can be microwave, as I've discussed before. Each has different effects and different physics. Unfortunately, what happens online is what happens with everything, is it gets transformed and morphed into something it's not. So an LRAD is auditory, right? It's a high-powered directional loudspeaker is one way to think about it. It is used for communication in the military for long-distance communications. It's also used for crowd control. LRAD is loud and directional, but it's not silent, and it's not telepathy or mind control. Then we have what are called active denial systems, ADS, which are real directed energy for deterrence. So it uses what we know, which is not classified, is they currently have a 95 gigahertz millimeter wave that creates an intense heating sensation on the skin. And it's presented as an intermediate force capability. That's how this is sold, essentially. This is actually an energy weapon. So we are using 95 gigahertz millimeter waves to create a sensation that feels terrible and people want to escape. Now, most of the ADS technology is going to be, what they call in defensive type posturing positions. However, with claims like what happened in Serbia recently and what we are finding out about what happened with our attack on Venezuela, there seems to be some type of advanced ADS system that the military might be using. And we're going to look at some patents and some patents that have come through regarding such things as mind control and what that actually means versus, actual real devices. And then we've had some new information about Havana Syndrome come out, and the intelligence community under Biden acquired a piece of equipment that may be responsible for what happened with Havana Syndrome. It's pretty interesting, and we're going to take a look at some of the reporting on that. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to take a look at a couple LRADs, and we're going to take a look at the attack in Serbia, and we're going to take a gander and see if that was indeed some form of an LRAD that was used, or maybe something much worse.
In very direct way, some stores.
I'll have to forgive me. There we go.
In very direct way, some stores are luring consumers to buy their products, and it comes in the form of a voice, a subtle voice, but some claim an intrusive and annoying voice that targets shoppers by sending them secret messages. Jeff Rossen shows us how it works.
Hey, you.
Step into a cafe, peruse a bookstore, maybe you'll hear it. A mysterious voice that appears out of nowhere.
Over here. Don't turn around. Can you hear me? Do you ever think about murder? Committing the ultimate crime?
Where's it coming from?
If you continue to hear a voice after walking away, please seek help immediately.
Cutting through the clutter is really important. You get bombarded with messages all the time, and we want ours to stand out.
The sound is directed to a very specific area.
The great thing is, where I get to be standing, I hear the message perfectly clear.
When you hear it, you may jump at first.
At first it was kind of creepy because I didn't know where it was coming from.
That is a bit obnoxious. I mean, it's just more of the general noise in the city.
It's interesting.
Veteran ad man Jerry Della Famina says he admires Core TV for finding a new way to get through to consumers. But, yep, there's a but.
The next point is a hand comes out and grabs you by the collar and pulls you in.
This is a test of the long-range acoustic device, LRAD. Once again, this is your city police department. You must not interfere with vehicular traffic. If you do, you'll be placed into custody. You must remain on the sidewalk.
Ajde, momci! Desi, Jovane, dođi, Jovane! Steni.
Exactly are these sonic weapons? They're devices that use powerful sound or focused energy instead of bullets. The most widely used version is called a long-range acoustic device, or LRAD. It looks like a flat speaker and fires a narrow beam of extremely loud sound in one direction. The US military has used them in Iraq, on Navy ships, and to guard military bases.
I say again, this is a military area. Move away from the perimeter.
It has a range of non-lethal capability that we can't even come close to with any of our fielded systems today that are in our military forces.
About 7 football fields, to give it some perspective.
It only penetrates 1/64 of an inch of your skin. Goes very shallow into where your nerve receptors are. and there's no permanent injury caused by it. We built in some safety margins and training for the operators.
They even let any of the guests volunteer to test out its effectiveness and safety, including the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Most described it as feeling like a hot oven or grill being opened up.
It is something that, once again, probably the safest system that we've developed as far as the non-lethal capability.
All right. Well, so there was a demonstration of a LRAD being used for riot control on folks, as well as the military's active denial system, or an ADS. So you see right there, very practical applications. And it started out with a news story from over 20 years ago talking about directed sound, silent sound. So this is like other folks cannot hear the sound. It's not like on a speaker. It's a very focused, almost laser-like focused sound directed right at you. So you could be, that was 20 years ago. We could be to a point with that technology now where you could be in a room full of people hearing something that no one else hears. Is that mind control? No. Could you drive somebody completely fucking crazy using it? Yes, you could. Let's be real. You could totally use that technology to really ruin someone's day at the very least. All right, you see it on the screen. Havana Syndrome. This has been a kind of a hot button issue for a while. Some folks don't even believe it's real, which is totally fine, because if you look at the documented information and the actual release of information that the government has put out there, they haven't really been supportive of it. They've said, yeah, we kind of think it's a thing, but, we're not really sure. Well, it's come to light in this last week and a half that the Pentagon purchased a device a long time ago, like a year or two ago, that may be responsible for what happened to people in Havana. So we've got 3 stories here, 3 of the main stories on it, cut down from CNN. But I think this is very, very pertinent information.
Learning that the Pentagon is testing a device that could be behind mysterious ailments that hit American spies, diplomats, and troops. The illness first emerged nearly 10 years ago. That's when US diplomats in Havana, Cuba, reported vertigo, severe headaches, and other signs of trauma. Later cases of so-called Havana Syndrome were reported worldwide. Sources say the device was purchased for millions of dollars in an undercover operation in the last days of the Biden administration.
Sources telling us that the Pentagon spent millions of dollars to purchase this device as part of an undercover operation conducted jointly with the Department of Homeland Security in the waning days of the Biden administration, and that U.S. officials have spent over a year now examining the device, studying it. While not entirely Russian in origin, the device is comprised of various Russian components. Part of this is that the device is relatively small and it can fit into a backpack. The CIA, their response to these victims has really shifted over time. Those victims feel largely that the Biden administration and to date the Trump administration has largely dismissed their reported symptoms, their calls for some sort of an answer. There could be several foreign countries that have this capability.
We found evidence suggesting that a unit of Russian military intelligence, the GRU, known as Unit 29155. Everybody in the world knows who they are because these are the guys responsible for poisoning Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury. But we were able to locate 2 of their operatives in 2 places, 2 different cities at 2 different time periods, Tbilisi, Georgia, and Frankfurt, Germany, actually going back to 2014. So this predates Havana, Cuba in 2016, traumatic brain injuries, and in some cases, really physically debilitating ailments. One guy we know is legally blind. Not only has the Pentagon been tinkering with this thing for a year, but it can fit inside of a backpack. And oh, by the way, it has Russian components.
2 years ago, you published your investigation linking Havana Syndrome to the use of energy weapons and a Russian military intelligence unit. At the time, now Vice President J.D. Vance, then Senator J.D. Vance, responded, quote, "Feels like a lot of journalists have lost their minds."
Kind of churlish and puerile comment from J.D. Vance. I kind of got the impression he didn't bother to read our investigation. You know, one of the results of that investigation, what we discovered is nobody could knock down what we uncovered. The ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, came out, and two agencies, one of them is said to be the NSA, the other is kind of in dispute. They altered their assessment, and they said that there's now a 50-50 chance that such a device could exist. One agency went on to say it may have been used against Americans abroad. The other agency cast some doubt on that. But that was a big move of the needle in terms of evidentiary support for AHI. Came out with a report last year saying that it's increasingly likely that some cases of AHI are caused by a foreign adversary.
As a former CIA officer, he says he's patient zero, the first person taken out of Cuba after suffering symptoms of what later came to be known as Havana Syndrome.
It was definitely a scary moment. I remember texting my brother in real time thinking that I may not make it out of this.
What is your reaction to hearing of this step in the investigation, the U.S. acquiring a device? They haven't come to any conclusions, but the possibility at least that this device may be to explain for the symptoms that you have suffered.
I've been called patient zero by the press. There are many cases that preceded me, going back to 2014 and earlier. So there is a long-standing pattern of intelligence officers being struck around the world here. If this has been in play for well over a year, we certainly have concerns that the IC under the Biden administration put out an ICA in 2025 in January, basically saying, hey, there's nothing here, it's not real, we still don't believe it, all the while they had a weapon system in hand. So,
well, that's pretty wild. Like I was saying, the government didn't seem to back up those that said they were affected by Havana Syndrome very well. They just, they were putting out that, there's a 50-50 chance, that it's not even real, so on and so forth, while the intelligence community in the back channels is purchasing this device from some seedy Russians. And it might be responsible for what happened. And it's full of Russian components. Oh, by the way, right? Like it was purchased from this Russian intelligence group. And it has Russian components. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't purchased by this Russian intelligence group was found to be operating in and around Havana even before this happened. The device is also full of Russian components. So those are two separate things. So that's correlation, not necessarily causation, but you can see there's connection. And it's amazing. They've had this device for God knows how long. And they're now kind of slowly releasing, well, it might have been responsible. So that makes me think that somebody in a lab at the Pentagon knows this thing was probably 100% responsible. Now, this is an LRAD. LRADs are probably not what might have happened in the case of Havana. But we saw that officer in New York City walking around with one, aiming it at people. You can see here how compact they actually are. They can fit right into a backpack. That's an officer carrying an entire system right there. Now, sonic weapons are a little different. This is what we are being told that we used in Venezuela. and they're real as well. So the ADS systems, right, the active denial systems, can also be used offensively as sonic weapons. They've had them on the side of ships for years. If you don't remember, in the early 2000s, our battleships in the Gulf were essentially sitting ducks for suicide bombers. You haven't heard about that in a long time, right? Well, that's because they have these things on the side of these ships. They can aim it right at somebody, and it deters them. You saw the response from the command sergeant major of the Marines when he got hit by the lowest legal frequency of this thing. He immediately jumped out of the way. The vice admiral of the Navy screamed like a girl when he got hit by it. Let me read to you what one of these Venezuelan soldiers said happened during the attack. This is a direct quote from the interview. "We were stationed at the border when suddenly we began to feel something very strange. It was not tear gas. It was not bullets. There was a sound, but it was not like an explosion. My ears started to hurt badly. I felt pressure in my head. Then my nose started bleeding. Several of my fellow soldiers collapsed. Some were vomiting. Others were disoriented and could not stand up. We did not understand what was happening. It felt like something was attacking us from a distance. I had never experienced anything like this in my military training. They told us later it could have been a sonic weapon. I know what I felt. I know what happened to my body. This was not normal." And I mean, this is why we were able to go in there with the Delta Force team and wipe out a couple of hundred guards, right? They had some of Cuba's best, not their best, but some of them, defending Maduro. He was inside of a compound. And all we sent was a Delta team. They took out hundreds of these defensive soldiers. How do we do that? You might be looking at it. Or some advanced form of it. Now, we've heard reports of this stuff as far back as the 90s. This is a 91 report from ITV News Bureau from East Iran, Saudi Arabia. So, full disclosure, this is not from the New York Times. Okay, this is from a ITV News Bureau Limited. Okay. However, this report gets into some pretty disturbing things. Basically, it says before Desert Storm, I guess when it was Desert Shield, we went in and set up our PSYOPs team, set up a set of antennas at this FM radio station, and then blasted all these Iraqi soldiers with similar type of technology. And there were a lot of reports of similar type of responses. However, the reports in this one came from more of an emotional response. So while the soldiers in Venezuela, they talk about throwing up, being disoriented, we've heard stories of nosebleeds. And Desert Storm, what happened is they lost their motivation to fight. It was completely silent to the human ear. The negative voice messages placed on the tapes alongside the audible programming by PSYOP psychologists were clearly perceived by the subconscious minds of the Iraqi soldiers, and the silent messages completely demoralized them and instilled a perpetual feeling of fear and hopelessness in their minds. Now, below that, we have a quote. Let me get the gentleman's name. Steve Corman at the ComOps Journal. And he's describing his encounter with this technology. At a government workshop some time ago, I heard someone describe a new tool that was described as the voice of Allah. This was said to be a device that would operate at a distance and would deliver a message that only a single person could hear. The story was that it was tested in a conflict situation in Iraq and pointed at one insurgent in a group who whipped around looking in all directions and began a heated conversation with his compatriots, who did not hear the message. At the time, I greeted the story with some skepticism, he wrote. So that's almost a confirmation of the story we just kind of went over. Now, the headline of Microwave Ray Gun Controls Crowd with Noise is not the crazy thing in this headline. Look at the date. Almost 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago. Our Pentagon, our DARPA pride themselves on being 20 to 40 years of advancement on what's out there and what's available in the civil sector. So what they used in Venezuela now, we might not know what it is for another 15, 20 years. Now, another danger with using any kind of electronic warfare is that, we had 150 jets in the skies. We had 150 aircraft in the sky over Venezuela. We're using some kind of electronic jamming to jam their data systems, their radar systems, their tracking systems, their communication systems, which is fantastic and a great feat for your military. But when you do things like that, you do leave a digital signature. So now Russia and China can look at this and go, okay, what caused our weapons not to work? What was used that did this? I guarantee you they are already reverse engineering this stuff if they don't already have it because of this attack. So this is how we get into the argument of some things just have to be kept secret and should only be used in like a worst case scenario. Now, the president this last week talked about some new weapons and some new weapon systems that we're going to be using and how advanced we are. Let's check that out.
It says U.S. forces used a sonic weapon in the Maduro raid. Eyewitnesses suggested that when the weapon was used, people fell to the ground with blood coming out of their nose.
There's some sonic technology that's manufactured right in San Diego, and it's used by the Coast Guard and so on. And it can be used anywhere from long-range talking to painful to even the symptoms you said. These non-lethal, non-kinetic weapons are part of the growing arsenal that President Trump is leading to make sure that our troops have.
Speaking of Venezuela, there was a weapon used, a sonic weapon, that took out many of the Cuban bodyguards that were used to defend Maduro. Lots of people saw the details about that weapon and were concerned. Is that something that Americans should be afraid of, something the United States is combating?
Yeah, it's something I don't want to, nobody else has it. We have weapons that nobody knows about. Probably good not to talk about them, but we have some amazing weapons. That was an amazing attack. Don't forget, that house was in the middle of a fort, an army base, a big one, a lot of soldiers, and they came in and they did their job. We lost nobody. The first of a whole new class of battleships to be produced in the years to come. Once completed, these new 30 to 40,000 ton plus vessels will be the flagships of the American naval fleet, and there has never been anything built like them. We're 15 to 20 years advanced in our submarines over anybody else. The battleships are going to be armed just in terms of guns and missiles at the highest level. They'll also have hypersonic weapons, many hypersonic weapons, state-of-the-art electric rail guns, and even the high-powered lasers that you've been starting to read about. We have lasers where you aim the laser at a target and it just wipes it out. Most sophisticated lasers in the world, and the most sophisticated laser in the world will be on the battleships that we're building. They'll also carry the nuclear arms, sea-launched cruise missiles currently under development.
Okay, laser beams. Sharks with freaking laser beams. No, battleships with freaking laser beams on their heads. That's what we're looking at. And in my search for some footage of laser weapons on battleships, there's a lot out there, y'all. From not just battleships, but to lasers equipped on top of Humvees. Railguns. A railgun, from what I understand, uses electricity and aluminum foil? Correct me if I have that wrong, but we're talking about technology that was theoretical when I was a teenager, now being deployed. And before we invaded Venezuela, do you remember when Trump authorized the CIA to go down there and start, and he announced it. He announced it to the world that he was sending the CIA to go down there and start operating. Well, I don't know if we may have a problem on our hands or not, but apparently we might have a situation here where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So we've got the CIA meeting with one opposition leader in Venezuela and the president meeting with the current leadership of Venezuela, and then vice versa, I believe. So what is going on? Let's take a look at that story.
We're now learning that CIA Director John Radcliffe met yesterday with Venezuelan interim President Delcy Rodriguez. The meeting taking place on the same day that President Trump met with Maria Corina Machado, the opposition leader of Venezuela.
It's the highest level U.S. government official that we are aware of who has traveled to Venezuela following that U.S. operation to remove Nicolas Maduro. And we understand that Radcliffe sat down with Delcy Rodriguez for 2 hours. He was there with a contingent of security and other officials who accompanied him for this meeting. And there's really no sign that the Trump administration is prepared to renege on its promise to Rodriguez, who was, of course, Maduro's deputy in Venezuela. The United States has really not been persuaded at this moment to throw its support behind Machado, the opposition leader, despite the United States president having complimentary things to say about her. Of course, they met in the Oval Office, and she gave him her Nobel Peace Prize.
Rodriguez also gave her first State of the Union message since taking power. What were some of the key takeaways from that speech?
There was a lot of saber rattling against the United States, a lot of fiery criticism aimed at the United States, and we didn't see that yesterday. She did say, made a comment about stained relations, alluding to the United States, but also, encouraged the Venezuelan people to not be afraid of diplomacy, as she put it.
What a fucking mess. So we took out Maduro and we left the entire government there in place because we don't want to govern. We just don't want drug dealers running countries, apparently. That's the message we're getting anyway. That's the messaging they're giving us. But we have the CIA now and the administration working both sides. So no matter who comes out on top at the next elections, we're going to be with the winner and we're going to be telling them what to do, it sounds like. I mean, it's enough to govern one country. Now we're going to govern two of them. And then what happens when the next president that comes in and doesn't want to deal with it just abandons it all? Mess. Complete fucking mess. Steve pointed to something talking about patient zero that we covered on here. He said that patient zero reminds him of a UFO whistleblower. He convinced patients 2 through 6 they had Havana, and he created a for-profit company which fulfills government contracts related to DEW Havana Syndrome. Now that's interesting. Great research, Steve. If that is factual, that's very good to know, right? Because all these things matter. My problem with it is why, if the Pentagon has this device that might be responsible, what is the resistance? Why are they so resistant to say, yep, we got hit by a DEW in Havana? Yep, there was Russian special operators in the time, and oh, by the way, the device we found that's capable of doing this is full of Russian components. If those are the facts, then what's the problem? It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, now let's look. I promised to look at some of these patents, and you have probably seen these before. These patents came out in the 90s. All right, about the goal of these patents was psychotronic warfare, essentially mind control. Okay, we're talking about using technology that exists and manipulating it to control a person's thoughts, feelings, even actions. It is fascinating and disturbing at the same time to look at this stuff. But I just wanted to make it very clear that a patent does not mean there's a working device. We have to be real with ourselves, right? Like, are they messing with some people? Is the intelligence community actively using directed energy weapons to mess with people? Absolutely. Do they have the ability to go into your brain and actually control what you think and how you feel about things? I don't know. There are patents trying to demonstrate how this can be done, but we don't know of any known device that can actually do this. Let's go back to what I was saying earlier, though, is that if you have the ability to pinpoint one person in a crowd full of 100 and send them a message that nobody else hears, you could essentially make them look crazy and feel crazy. So is that a form of mind control? Sure, I think so. I think it's a form of mind manipulation at the very least. This patent here was in 1974, y'all. They have been trying to do this to us since the possibility was thought of. I think that is the most disturbing part of all of it. Whether it's real, whether it's not real, whether it's being used, whether it's not being used, the fact is people want to do it. McDonald's wants to come in your dreams, y'all, and make you crave a Big Mac while you're sleeping. That's not a joke. They actually did a research study trying to get that to happen. A lot of the defenses for LRAD particularly, and sometimes these ADS systems, you can use something as thin as cardboard placed between you and this system can help reduce the effects. And there's many other things out there you can seek. There's entire YouTube videos that go into how to protect yourself from these things. They are going to be used. They are being used. They are going to continue to be used. And it's only going to get worse. You hear the operators for the military saying it's completely safe. Barely penetrates your skin. Just a tiny millimeter penetration. Okay, well, what happens when somebody turns up the setting because they're having a bad day? So, I think mind control, if real, is a mix of these things. I think mostly it's manipulation. So it's not getting into someone's head per se and telling and controlling them like some kind of Manchurian candidate. It's knowing what buttons to push, how to manipulate, and how to take advantage of some of these DEWs to press people's buttons to make them do and act certain ways. If I'm thinking of it right now behind my computer screen, I promise you, they have had meetings in the intelligence community about it for years now. So, let's be mindful, y'all. And I think as the technology continues to develop, we have to think ahead. If they're 20 to 40 years ahead on development with this stuff, what does that mean for us? For your average day-to-day life, probably not much. But let's say you believe in a cause. You feel strongly about something. You think something needs to change, and you're passionate about it. In fact, you're so passionate, you want to exercise your First Amendment right. And you want to demonstrate about how you feel about this topic. And you could be doing this one day and out of nowhere get hit by a beam that does some very nasty things to you. Are you ever going to go out and demonstrate for something you believe in again? It's not Mind control sounds more like population control. So I wanted to get this information out there. I wanted to share this. I know there's a lot going on because of what happened in Venezuela. And I think as the United States, we need to keep our moral high ground. I think that's kind of our job. So let's think about what the people in charge think is okay to use against other human beings. In the name of war, in the name of peace, we must injure, hurt, and kill. All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're on my YouTube channel, and share if you're on X. I will see you all next time. Thanks for hanging out on the Gabriel Speaks Show podcast.